Numbers rolling? Numbers are rolling. Okay, listen, I tried to do this yesterday and I didn't feel like I gave it enough energy somehow. I didn't succeed. I didn't succeed. And so this is another take. This is another take, okay? This is about the UN, and it's titled, Improve the UN or Build Another Institution. And the question arose because of Andre Lewin's experience with the UN, my experiences with the UN, the failures of the UN, which are that it can't function properly to keep the world at, the goal of humanity now is to survive and become a big-time species, able to live outside of the planet, off the planet, live in the multi-universe, be able to travel across time. We are conscious, we know how to reinvent ourselves, we know how to make machines, we can fly, we can go to the moon, we can go to Mars if we want. It's all about will. But the end result, the aim for humanity is to survive forever as a big-time species. That's what our competitors in the universe have done. They are alive. Whether or not they live at home or live in the space apartment is one way of putting it. Now, Andre Lewin had such a long career as a French diplomat, I can't even spend the time to explain all of who he was right now. But what he wrote was essentially, he gives in this paper, Improve the UN or Build a New Institution, a background of where the UN came from, which was out of World War I, and the terror and the horror of World War I. 100 years oil war. 100 years. We're in the death throes of the 100 years oil war that started when coal stopped being the fuel for the battleships. The League of Nations. President Wilson's idea to establish peace through collective security after World War I had three major defects, he says. Several important states were missing, and he goes on to talk about which they were. And it is complete, okay? But here he says, decisions required unanimity, which amounted to giving a veto to everybody. Then he says the General Secretary of the League had purely administrative powers, and 20 years later, war cannot be prevented. World War II, World War I led to World War II. 100 years now since that. It's 100 years of oil war, really. The UN avoids these difficulties, the one that we have now with 191 members. This was written in 2003. 191 members. It is today practically universal and truly reflects the international society. Decisions are taken by majority. Vote. Let's see. He first starts off with the most dramatically difficult concept, that being a United Nations, or government of government, really, army of its own, triggered essentially by war crimes that are known to be taking place, proven. We live in a multi-power polar balance now. We lived for a long time during the Cold War, in a situation of bipolar power balance. That's what it was. And it worked, okay? MAD worked. Mutual assured destruction worked. However, now, the situation is a multipolar power balance, which was the same power balance that led to World War I. We're slow walking into what I call the Apocalyptic Riot. North Korea threatens the United States really. John C. Merzheimer in The Tragedy of Great Power Politics says that every nation must get nuclear weapons to play war by threat. He keeps saying repeatedly in his book, The Tragedy of Great Power Politics, that there is no government of governments to call when one government is threatened by another. I know what the multi-power polar balance can lead to. Okay, and then he goes on, he says, many resolutions are not respected. You've got a lot of member states in the UN that really don't like the idea of UN TV, reality, truth. They don't like the idea. That's why you have you don't have UN TV on TV to turn to click on and look for truth about international relations and threats. The threats are to the working people. All of us, human, just honest, working people are threatened by nuclear weapons. All of us have enough to deal with the weather. All of us need a good education. All of us. The UN is failing here. The UN has to issue to all the elementary schools ethical guidance to young people and tell them what it means to be a civilized human being and what sort of values you're supposed to hold. Value yourself, value your life, value the lives of others. The aim for all of us together is to become a big-time species in a universe, a huge universe of universes. Many resolutions are not respected. Many things that happen are presented in ways that are truly propagandistic. We have no balance. We have no truth. We need to balance our minds in the mental landscape. He who owns the television owns the minds of the people. Various administrative traditions inherited from some member states coexist in the management with practices developed in more than half a century of UN life. If some peacekeeping operations succeeded, many others just perpetuated a precarious status quo, preventing further fights but not improving solutions, not imposing solutions. There are solutions. For instance, Israel and Palestine, a little tinderbox that could set off the world at any moment as they try and live out some theocratic dream of destruction, salvation, perfection, and death. It's all force. I suggested that the Israelis be forced or volunteer, which doesn't seem to be happening, volunteer to ensure the Palestinians against death and destruction, and the Palestinians ensure Israelis against death and destruction, as a disincentive to keep killing each other or oppressing each other. You have to end theocratic influence. Ethics. Morality can often be unethical. You cannot expect that there is going to be some permanent state of non-war. Human beings seem to just love war. I got a good war for the UN Army, and that is to eliminate all nuclear weapons, all weapons of mass destruction. We do not deserve to have this threat against us. War is a permanent situation. You may as well just accept that and enforce the rules of war. Eliminate nuclear weapons, let people have their damn wars, but enforce the rules of war and eliminate disruptions to civilians' lives. It's the civilians, it's those honest, hard-working people that get killed horrible ways. He sees no chance to create a new and totally different institution. But he does believe that the UN needs an army of its own triggered by war crimes. I see gendarmes and systems that keep a lid on violence. We don't have to have it. But since so many people want it, we have to work at creating a government of governments that limits the disruptions to people's lives. All right, he goes on. He says, a good thing has defects. If a good thing has defects, it is better to suppress the defects than the thing itself. The thing that we have created with the UN is its systems, and like the International Aviation Civil Association Organization. It's ICAO and UNESCO and the World Health Organization. I'll tell you one thing, defense and education are the two legitimate roles of government. Defense and education. And defense from disease is as much defense from another nation's army as any other part of the defense that is a responsibility of any government. We have to be realistic. And we have to look at the charter of that was created in 1945. It wasn't until 1976 that the Declaration of Human Rights became legally a binding and enforceable set of law. It was the Covenant on Civil and Political Rights that codified in law, international law, the rights of human beings in this world. We have a right. We have rights as human beings under law, international law. So it's these organizations of the UN that form the foundation of what cannot be abandoned, but has to be built on in this day, in these times of the multi-power polar balance. Yeah, I suggest reading all the time, and I suggest you read classic readings on international relations to get some of those parts about what it means to live in the days of multi-power polar balance. And we're going to have to turn to our systems engineers to come up with a truly comprehensive system of governance, system of a government of governments. This is a big difficulty because it challenges sovereignty. We know that nationalism leads to war. We know that sanctions lead to war. And we know also that some people and some nations will not react until you force them, until you use force. It's unfortunate, but some people were born to be, some people have a destiny. I have my destiny, others have the destiny to be warriors. My destiny was to be a warrior poet, for instance. I had my fights when I was young. I protected my people when I was young with my fist. Enlarge the Security Council by introducing as permanent members some countries according to their population and to their budgetary contribution, he says. I don't believe we need, I think that there are too many elections. He says elected for 2 years. I don't think you can get anything done in 2 years, really, myself. I think we need to, even in the United States, set the cycle of elections to either to 4 years for all votes going at the same time, so that you have a period when everybody can study the politics and study the people and study the issues and then vote. There are too many elections. You want to have a good system that allows people the time to reflect and determine. You're going to have your voting season, and for the same for the United States, and the same for Russia, the same for all the world powers. Go ahead, set your voting periods up at the voting time every 4 years, okay? I don't like it 6 years for senators, and then 4 years, and then off this and off that. It's all designed to keep the people out of balance with no time to focus. It says here, better balance the responsibilities between the General Assembly and the Security Council. I'm not going to read all that right now. I tried yesterday. I read it. It was flat. This is my redo. You can look at the original reading for most of this. It says, invite the Secretary General. Now, this is something I wrote an essay on the original Transcendian.org. But it says, invite the Secretary General to make more systematically the use of Article 99 of the Charter, which allows him to seize the Security Council. He says seize the Security Council of dangerous situations which could jeopardize peace and security. I think you get it, especially if you're French. The French paid an awful lot for what happened in World War I. The Germans did too. All right. Now, here, it goes on. He talks about some history. He talks about the Korean War. He talks about how, really, if you use the Article 99 and allow for confidential meetings, the participants from each nation will not feel like they have to play to their national. They can think internationally instead of always thinking about how it's going to play at home. They can work together for international peace. It talks about civil society being represented, the NGOs, the artists being able, individuals are not allowed to speak. You have to be, I haven't got an army, so I can't, I am the founder of Transcendian, but I can't speak, because really, a government is nothing. It's always, a king can be anything, vision, inheritance, usurpation, but as long as he's got control of an army, he's a nation, okay? He talks about the territory of the exile island, like what happened with Napoleon put on Elba, and he was very attached to that. I argued for Transcendia, the nation of airports, taking up that responsibility, because the despots' failures always run to the airports anyway, okay? We'll put them in hotels, move them around from airport to airport. That's what it takes. But you can't trap a rat and expect them not to bite. Here he mentions me in this paper. Endow the UN with the technical and editorial means of a television channel. Now, there is a UN TV channel, but you can't watch it. It's unwatchable. It's dense. It's like for only the people there at the UN that need to catch up on a meeting. The Voice of America is even used, the propagandist, our propaganda. The idea of the UN TV channel has been initially suggested by an American, Russell Scott Day, founder of Transcendian. He wrote about me. So I have standing. He talks about effective sanctions that name and shame nations that violate world standards of behavior, ethics. A weakening of the rigidity of some legal principles which are regularly invoked and paralyze the operations of maintenance of peace. He speaks of this. The countries which could and would intervene militarily outside of their borders, or even certain safe cases inside without an approval or an endorsement of the Security Council, would be publicly blamed by the organization and banished. He talks about giving people yellow cards, nations yellow cards, red cards, compares it to soccer, which a lot of people in the world understand. This is very important. He says, strengthen the knowledge of the United Nations by pedagogy. How do you say that? How do you say that? My wife is shooting us, Nancy Alex.
Pedagogy, no,
pedagogy, P-E-D-A-G-O-G-Y. It basically amounts to teaching about the UN and flying the UN flag in towns all over the world, teaching about the UN goals at elementary schools. And I believe now that we really need to face the fact that hate and sacrifice of your life is taught in madrasas, and there are schools that teach hate and violence to very young people, and that has to be addressed. We need to. 20 years goes by in the blink of an eye. The people who are terrorists and barbarians. It's a struggle between civilized behavior and barbarism. We have to face it. 20 years goes by in the blink of an eye. And what you teach a child is what determines what they'll do later. Okay, I went through the whole paper. I guess it's too long. Thanks.